Hello, Robert. Good to see you, and thank you for joining me.
Hello, Emma.
So we don't know each other at all, Robert. It'll be good to get to know you a bit better. So I like to start all of these interviews with a kind of an introductory, slow reflection on your journey into Quakers. So can you tell us a bit about why you ended up in Quakers and perhaps how long ago that was? What were you seeking, and what did you find?
That's a very good question, which could provoke a very long answer. I
There you
think,
go.
I think, I think I came to Quakers by a very slow and gradual process of osmosis. My maternal grandmother worked for her family worked on the Gurney estate in North Norfolk. Of course, the Gurneys are one of the big Quaker families. They endowed the school that she went to, and so I'm pretty sure that my grandmother was influenced, although she wasn't a Quaker, she was influenced by her the Quakerism that permeated the estate where she grew up. When I went to primary school, my headmistress was a Quaker, and it wasn't a Quaker school. And her husband, George Evans, was a writer that I subsequently became fascinated in the work his work and written a book about. And then we went for a long weekend in near Ironbridge and went to visit the museum. And we stood in the house where Abraham Darby lived, obviously a Quaker entrepreneur. And the lady showing us around said, so she said, Telford Quakers meet here once a month. And I thought, that's fascinating. What do they do? What's it like? And the very next weekend, I drove into Norwich on Sunday morning, having worked out when the Norwich meeting met, walked in the gate with some trepidation. Um, a friend met me at the door and explained what was going to happen and how it worked, and because it was silent. And I just realised the minute I sat down and started, this is where I needed to be. It was kind of quite deep and quite profound. I just felt I'd arrived there. In my youth, my father was a church warden. I was an altar server at a local church. In fact, the church, which is now about 60 yards from my house. Um, but Anglicanism just does nothing for me. I've been to an Anglican service more recently, and keep thinking, when are they going to shut the fuck up and get on with it? When can we start? When can we stop telling us what to do? So for me,
Yeah.
and the whole Quaker thing just really fits. For me, at the end of that first meeting, by coincidence, they had a discussion afterwards for new attenders, which I stayed for, and I was completely captivated. So I just knew then that I wanted to belong. And for me, membership and that commitment, that kind of being out as a Quaker was really important. So if you look at my social media profiles, it says Quaker. Um, since Justin Welby resigned, it now says Humanist Quaker, just to make sure that I don't get mistaken for anything else. And, and I find now from that was quite a few years ago. I couldn't tell you how many now, but it's just become a very important part of my life.
Right.
I've
So,
also become horribly enmeshed in the business of Quakerism. So I'm a trustee of our area meeting. I'm the man with the key to the door of the meeting house here where I live, and end up talking to builders, contractors. Just successfully got a grant for some new heating. So and I'm very comfortable. And my one of my kind of questions to myself at the beginning was, so the early Quakers were entrepreneurial and very successfully ran ethical businesses that kind of changed the world, banking, chocolate, um, lots of things. Where are those people now? Where are the Quaker entrepreneurs today? I've yet to really find them.
mm, yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree.
And my kind of sense is that one of the opportunities for Quakerism is to kind of reintroduce that those business values, not in the clunky Quaker business method way, which is useful, but something far deeper and fundamental.
Mm. No, that's really interesting. And I'd like to get to that, but I want to go back a little bit if I can. I want to try to explore a bit about your captivation, you talked about this was a captivating experience, and you knew that you wanted to be a
Yeah.
part of it. And yet I think I heard you say that you describe yourself as humanist, I think you said. And you're not, the Anglican Church is not working for you then. So what can you just say a bit more about what is captivating about the experience?
think it's the I think it's the collective act of silent worship. I think it's that gathered meeting, that being together and being kind of on the same page and connected without actually saying anything. It's just amazing how you can sit in a meeting and somebody can stand up and say something and you think, "Oh, I was thinking that."
Mm.
And that kind of interconnectedness, which is just really interesting. I have the sense that we do kind of connect in ways that we don't really understand. Um, and that kind of it's that kind of purity of collective of connection, isn't it, that you get in a Quaker meeting that you just don't get anywhere else.
No, and I mean, what you're saying, I really understand and connect with. I suppose what I'm trying to understand better is you've come from an Anglican tradition. I don't know if you'd put it
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
So you're familiar with the church, you're familiar with prayer, an experience of God, and yet perhaps you've rejected that for yourself. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a bit more about that. Like,
So yeah, so I mean I was an altar server. My father was a church warden. It was kind of what you did. You went along with you. I went with the flow. Um, One of the defining moments of that journey was I was researching a book. I went to Ireland and I went to a Catholic mass at Galway Cathedral. And I just watched people coming in, crossing themselves and going through the motions. And I realized that you can be a really good Catholic or Anglican and never turn your brain on once. It's just a whole series of ritualistic behaviors,
mm,
words, doing things. There's no there's no depth of feeling. And I also became quite sure that I just don't believe things like the creed. I believe in, but I don't believe in. I don't know. I'm questioning. I do know that people exist. I know that people support each other, and I know that the humanity is important and kind of, I sense, interconnected in lots of different ways that we don't really know. In the same way that trees are, for example. Um, so why externalize that and put it on an old white man with a long white beard sitting on a cloud? It just doesn't seem. It's too convenient. It's too convenient to just jump to a
mm,
solution and
mm.
then say my solution is better than your solution because you're a Muslim or your solution because you're a Hindu. So in a way, I sense Quakerism takes all that, puts it into the pot, and what you come out with is something that's distilled and far more built the essence of belief, if you like.
Yeah. One of my interviewees said to me, don't think of the word belief like an intellectual thing, but it's more a meaning of trust and what you trust in.
Mm,
So I'm really intrigued by what you're saying because you're talking about this deep interconnectedness amongst the people in the room.
yeah.
And, I'm sure all of us who go to Quakers feel that and know what
Mm,
you're referring to. But I'm also intrigued by you've been in a Catholic mass and you've been in a church service, and you don't think that they have that depth of connectedness. Whereas I do experience that, you see. I would say that
okay.
there is something there. Um, I mean, are you certain that it's not there in the sense that
It's
it
it's
must?
not there. It's not there for me. And I think it's because you have to kind of assert that you believe in certain things.
Yeah, with the creed. Yeah.
I just can't go with that.
No, no. Lots of
Even
Quakers
even
say
our
that.
Father which art in heaven. Well, really?
Yeah.
Who says? Show me the evidence. And I guess in Quaker worship I feel something. In Anglican worship I don't.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's great. And I think that's why. that's why so many of us think that Quaker meeting has a real place and a real kind of something to offer the world.
It does,
Because
yeah,
you've just said you feel something that you don't feel in other church services.
yeah.
So, but can I ask you a bit more about that then?
Sure,
When
and the fact that people come to a Quaker meeting from all sorts of traditions. In Norwich meeting, there were people that were raised in the Jewish faith. There was a former Catholic priest. I got to know a former Anglican priest, and they all people have their, they're raised in different faiths and that some
Mm,
work in those faiths, but then they come to Quakerism at a point in life when they start to question.
yeah.
And one of the stats that we get fed is the average age of Quakers is about over 60, isn't it? And maybe you have to have that level of maturity and life experience to become that questioning. Maybe that's what happens at that point in your life. I don't know.
Mm. Well, that's why I'm having these conversations and we're talking about, how much are we questioning, but also how much have we found? And I
Yeah.
suppose one of the things that I'm trying to understand for with each person that I'm speaking to is there is we all say we're seekers and we're questioning, but we don't talk so much about what we have found. And I
Mm.
suppose in what you've described, I'm more interested in finding out a bit more about, you say, I don't know if there is God, and I don't know if he is sat in heaven.
Mm.
That's what you're saying. I don't know, quite an agnostic kind of position. And
I think it's accepting that it's accepting that you can't know what we don't know. So don't go there. What we do know is that we exist and that people exist, and that and that goodness exists. And that just seems to be more pragmatic than clutching at wild dreams.
yeah. And I suppose some of the people who I've been speaking to would say, well, we know we can't know intellectually, but we experience it. And I wonder whether what you've just described as I feel something there's a connectedness that I feel when I'm
Mm.
sat in a Quaker meeting. Do you see that other people feel that same feeling or very similar feeling, but call it God and call that experience an experience of God?
Yeah, they might well. They
Yeah,
might well.
yeah.
And that's okay.
So how is it for you then, knowing that in the room there are people who are very religious, who are sat there worshipping God and worshipping and being grateful for and being thankful for that experience of God's love in their lives?
I think that's a reflection of the diversity of a Quaker meeting. I think that's good. I think it's healthy. I think if you have different views and different perspectives, then you get a more balanced meeting. Um, I kind of think that fundamentally we're all worshiping the same thing. It's just that we all call it something different.
Yeah. So you think actually we are unified? I mean, is it around community and love and interconnectedness and we're all on the same path, or
I
is
think
that
there's a
what
degree of that.
unifies us?
I think there's a degree of that.
Hmm.
I'd also say that because of my background is entrepreneurship, I've quite quickly gravitated, I said, to the business of Quakerism. I'm a trustee and I'm involved with a grant group and I do this and I do that and
Hmm.
I'm involved with managing the building.
Hmm.
I find it quite comfortable to be involved with the business of Quakerism. In a way, it distracts me from the what I'm really there to do, which I try and focus on Sundays.
So let's talk a bit about the entrepreneurship then. What is your background in that and your interest in that? And so explain that the connection there
So,
to.
I, so since I made redundant in 1990, I worked for myself and I had a marketing consultancy and I did a lot of work with charities that wanted to improve take control of their income and their destiny, basically. I started an apprenticeship social enterprise.
Mm.
I've just been in and around that whole kind of world for 30 years, and I'm I've written books about entrepreneurship, so it's just a familiar place. I guess
Mm,
it's a place I'm familiar with before I became a Quaker, so I brought that with me, if you like.
mm.
Um,
And how do you feel that is perceived within Quaker communities? So I have this immediate reaction of I wonder how that goes down amongst a left-wing audience who perhaps, I mean, would you say that the Quaker meeting that you go to or the Quakers you know are not particularly supportive of, I don't know, capitalist endeavor, shall we put it?
but you can be left-leaning and entrepreneurial. I think being entrepreneurial is a mindset as much as about capitalism. Um, I think that a lot of Quakers haven't had experience of the world of commerce and therefore they don't understand it and therefore they're inclined to demonize it. But I go back to the early Quakers who made their living by trade
Mm,
and they did it in a very ethical and fair way that was good to their staff, good to their customers, good to their suppliers. And to me, that's very healthy.
mm, mm.
I think you can't do away with commerce. We need commerce. And early Quakers were very good at engaging with that.
Yeah. So why is it that we don't have that at the moment then? What's your impression of Quakers in Britain today and their approaches to entrepreneurship and commerce?
I think I could be cruel and say, well, they all seem to be retired social workers who just see the world very differently. But that's not true because they come from all sorts of backgrounds. I think I do feel that I do find connections with things like Extinction Rebellion uncomfortable because I think, again, early Quakers would lead to
Mm.
change by lobbying and by working with the system rather than by breaking the law and challenging the system.
Yeah, yeah,
And it could quite easily become a religious society of political activists,
I know.
which would be a shame. And I think that I think many people are put off coming to Quakes because they view it as that.
I agree with you, Robert. I mean, I think that the bulk of the culture within British Quakers today, certainly, across the whole country, wherever I've been, there is a predominance of this, well, let's, as you say, Extinction Rebellion, XR. That's the mindset which is
Yeah.
certainly most vocal. I don't know if it's numerically dominant, but it's certainly a very vocal and supported ministry. And it's something I think that many Quakers and certainly centralized staff would say this is a big part of our ministry in the world.
Mm.
Um, and I also have my doubts that that's the best way or certainly not the only way.
It's the one thing that would prompt me to leave, actually. If it goes too far that way, I would opt out and just continue in my own kind of way on my own. I do lots of entrepreneurial stuff which benefits the wider world, and I do that in the way I do it, which is say about lobbying and working with, and
Mm, mm,
you do stuff from within. You don't stand outside waving banners and throwing paint and stuff.
I know. I mean,
In my view,
let's talk about that for a minute then. I mean, what would you say to? There's going to be a lot of people listening to this who are very supportive of Just Stop Oil and
yeah,
XR and activism in that, as you say, banners, standing outside,
yeah.
making a demonstration. There's a lot of that goes on amongst Quakers. What would you say to them then about, I don't know, the downsides or the dangers or the limitations? Or how would you speak to them? What's the
But
message you
it's,
have?
it's their choice, isn't it? It's we all live our lives as we choose, and if their choice is to do that, then that's their right. I think I think what I think the problem comes when they assume that all Quakers are on the same page on that. I think we're not. I think just as we have people from different religious backgrounds, we have people from different political backgrounds and people from different with different perspectives on needing change.
Mm,
And
mm,
there's no doubt that climate change is a real issue. There's no doubt that this afternoon
yeah.
Donald Trump is going to say drill baby drill and climate change is put on hold for 4 years in America,
Yeah.
which is terrible. But the way to change that isn't. I don't see the way to change that is to wave a banner in Whitehall.
No. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about Elon Musk here. So one of the things you might say to the the climate change protesters within Quakers is, well, standing outside a building and waving banners isn't actually solving the problem. Whereas somebody like Elon Musk, you might say, is involved in creating alternatives around electric cars or whatever else it might be. So what I'm seeing is a lot of demonizing. It's almost like a Luddite
Yeah,
position.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
And a demonizing of people like Elon Musk, but he's the obvious, most prominent person that we see.
And people demonize electric. I drive an electric car, and I have
Mm.
an all-electric house, and I have solar panels, and I have batteries. And people demonize electric cars because they say that Congolese children are being abused in cobalt mines, and it, a headline somewhere becomes a big reason for not doing something. Um, but we have to stop using oil. There's no doubt about that. We have to stop burning gas. There's no doubt about that. Um, but there's so much misinformation and yeah, misinformation out there. Yeah, I'm writing a book about our at the moment about our relationship with soil, and I'm looking at the extent to which the Amazonian rainforests have been ripped down to grow soya to feed cattle on feedlots to produce cheap beef, whereas cows eat grass very happily, grow more slowly, taste better, and you can leave the trees alone. It's those are the kind of things we have to change.
Mm. So you're speaking there as if you are actually a climate change protester in your own way, and you're making decisions, consumer decisions of your own,
Yeah.
and writing books and so you
And
actually.
well, the book I'm writing now, the title is Down to Earth, and I'm meeting different people that interact with soil in different ways. From a humanist naturist, sorry, a naturist Christian, to a man that's building a bypass, to a bomb disposal chap, and I'm just trying to present some of the perspectives on soil and earth and climate, not in a way that's combative or I'm not saying this is right or that's right. I'm just saying you need to look at the big picture and look at everything. I've just been writing about Asian jumping worms this morning, which are an invasive species in North America that are actually dominating and messing up food chains. But worms are interesting because they've quietly gone about the business for millions of years without getting involved with stuff, and they've just evolved. And we have to an extent, but we try to change things too quickly.
Mm. Well, yeah, yeah. So in terms of the dominant culture within Quakers, you see, I'm
Mm.
not hearing conversations like this very much, which is one of the reasons why I'm trying to speak to a variety of people. Um, are you vegan or
No,
vegetarian?
I eat meat,
Mm, yeah. So
and
do I.
I prefer to eat meat that's been you know properly grown. Grass-fed beef is healthy.
That's right. So that's a similar decision as I make.
Yeah,
And I
a chicken goes from egg to slaughter in about 6 weeks. That's
Mm,
that's not very long at all. Um, Soy-fed beef is slaughtered far quicker than grass-fed beef, and so it's there's the whole economics of food production and the fact that we've become accustomed to cheap food and expensive houses. What we need to have is cheap housing and expensive food that we can afford both.
mm. Do you feel able to talk about your thoughts on these issues within the culture that we have in Quakers at the moment?
Um, when they come up, I haven't got a problem with expressing my views. No, if I have I used to regularly meet a vegan Quaker for a coffee at a coffee house, and he would always have a chocolate cookie thing. And I was like, "Are you sure that hasn't got animal fat in?" If you're going to be if I was going to be a vegan, I'd be
Yeah.
totally vegan. I wouldn't make compromises. It's rather like people that to drive their car to a protest.
Well, yes,
You
yes.
know, I
I
wouldn't do
mean,
that.
this is the thing, isn't it? That life is all about compromises, and
Yeah.
I worry at the moment that the culture within Quakers across Britain has become quite uniform.
Mm,
That the culture is has become this kind of vegan protest style culture.
mm.
And I think so, for example, we don't have a culture of our young people going into science, where
Yeah.
they could actually, in 20 years' time, have an impact on
Yeah.
some kind of future
Yeah.
direction of the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not a culture that we are pushing or we
No.
care about.
The culture is to have a criminal record and the more you go to prison for protesting, the better you are.
Mm, I know. Does that worry you?
Well, as I say, if it gets to the point where it worries me too much, I should just walk away. One thing I've learned as I've got older is that if I'm just going to tolerate stuff I can't have. I'm not going to compromise in things that I used to. I think as you get older, you become more set in your ways, more particular. Um,
Mm. You see, walking away is not an option for me, really, for whatever reason. So I wonder what you're talking about walking away because of these issues.
the challenge I have is I've looked at where would I walk to if I walked away. So I live 60 yards from my parish church. I wouldn't go there. I know the
Yeah.
vicar, he's a good friend, but
Yeah.
I really wouldn't want to go there.
Yeah.
Uh, where would I go?
Well, exactly. And I think this is the
And the answer is probably the gym.
Quakers become a the gym. Yeah, or the beach or the or go for a walk
Yeah,
in the woods
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
nature, and
yeah.
that is what people look to, isn't it? And of course people looking at Eastern traditions and meditation or whatever as an alternative as well.
And one of the interviewees for the my next book a local vicar, and I met him because he was ordained late in life after a career with the BBC, and we were talking about Celtic Christianity and how it was very much earth-based, earth-centered. You know, and pre-Christian is all about Earth, the moon, the sun, and the natural world. And it's the Roman Church that kind of changed all that.
Mm, mm, mm.
So in a way, yeah, you could say the essence of Quakerism is going back to that kind of that root of early belief.
Yeah, yeah. So let's come back to this business approach then, or entrepreneurship mindset. What is your thoughts about how we could, what could we say here to make people think about what that has to offer?
What we should be doing is illustrating by the way we behave ourselves and run our own businesses. Um, but you look at BYM, it's not hugely profitable at the moment. There's an interesting letter in the Friend, wasn't it, last week, by somebody who was going to leave a legacy and change their mind because they felt that the money wasn't being wisely used. And a constant business meeting agenda item in my meeting is the expectation that we all chip into BYM. And my question always is, so what does BYM give me in return? And I actually couldn't hand on heart say I know what that is.
And you see, it's not just about what we get in return. I think it's more than that. It's about what are they doing on our behalf? Like, what are we funding?
Well,
Um,
exactly, yeah. And if it's protest, then frankly, I
it
choose
is.
not to fund protest.
Yeah, yeah. And I've also said already on one of these interviews, I've stopped funding it myself.
Mm,
So I think partly it's not about oh we're declining in numbers, so there's not enough money going into the centre. Actually, it's quite a few of us, and
mm,
I've spoken to some who are actively choosing not to.
Yeah.
I think we have to rethink at the centre how many staff we have. What is the work and why is the work about protest, which you could argue is a destructive force,
And
trying
if the
to
work, and if
destroy
the work,
welfare
and
rather
if
than
the,
a creative force and creating something new.
sorry, if the work, and if the work is about protest, then you don't necessarily need to rely on a diminishing number of Quakers to fund it. You get funded by the wider community. Because there are people that want to fund protest who don't want to rock up at Meeting House on Sunday morning for an hour's silence. And then the organisation just changes completely.
So what do you make then currently of the structures that we have centrally? You said that it's about protest. I mean, is that what you're saying? That the central staff and organisation and structure of BYM is mainly about protest?
I'm sure it isn't. It does lots of good things, but I'm not sure that I'm that aware of what it does. I'm not aware of it adds value. Um, I think one of the paradoxes of Quakerism is that when we have a testimony to simplicity, we make things so bloody complicated. And that's true locally, area-wise, and I guess nationally. Um, I sit on a grant panel nationally that spend all can take all day to decide to make a few thousand pounds in grants. And I sat on other grant panels, um, dare I say, for lottery funded money, where we'll give away millions in half a day. I'm
Yeah.
not saying either is right or wrong, but they just illustrate different approaches and different cultures.
Mm. Mm. And I suppose all organisations become more complicated over time, don't they?
They do.
And one of the things that worries me is that because we already have a staff body that have made their careers within the
Yeah.
structure, then
Yeah.
clearly they want to keep going and they want
Yeah.
to carry on having a career.
And
And
and that's natural, understandable. You kind of think about George Fox and how he didn't like what was happening in the religious world that he was seeing. So he walked away and did his own thing, and others went with him. And potentially, is there a risk or an opportunity for some Quakers to do the same thing?
what are you thinking of there?
I
Or,
don't know. Just I mean, what's that group in America that there are two left? They're in Maine. Um, they were Quakers and they walked away, didn't they, years ago? I forgot what they're called.
do you mean sh the Shakers or?
Yes, the Shakers.
Yeah.
I went to the Shaker village in Maine last year, and there are two Shakers left. Partly because they have a policy of celibacy, which is kind of self-defeating. But they were, I think they were a group of early Quakers who said, no, we don't like this. We want to do it our way, and they went off and did their own thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But we have social media now. We have ways of communication across the Quaker community that never existed before. So it'd be relatively easy for a breakaway group to form.
It would be, but I suppose I mean that may happen. I suppose what I'm more interested in really is how there's 10,000 of us apparently
Yeah,
across the UK. That's a lot of people across Britain,
it's
England,
not
Scotland,
many. It's not
Wales.
many at all. There are probably more
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses in one county than there are Quakers in Britain,
Well, yes, but 10,000 people is still quite a lot of people.
which is quite a lot of
So,
people.
so
Yeah.
I suppose what I'm interested in is how that the culture across our society has become dominated by one particular worldview,
Hmm.
and that there is so much of that that people with different types of views are not actually celebrated in quite the same way.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I've come across a kind of a so for example, a cluster of opinions, and the three is the new trinity, really, which is around so climate crisis, you might call
Hmm.
it, and the
Yeah,
protest around that, rather than any kind of
yeah.
scientific endeavor, as I've said, to creatively try to
Hmm.
address the problem. It's all about protest and it's all about net zero and reducing the quality of our lives, really, reducing the consumption, etc.
And that's really important, crucially important. But it's how we go about it that matters, I think.
So there's that view. Um, then there's the LGBT, which is kind of we want more gay rights, more trans rights, more gay
Yeah.
people, more trans people within Quakers, which again, it seems to me that's kind of become a huge issue, which I mean, I'm gay myself, so this is, I've been accused of homophobia within the society. I mean, because I've got an opinion about certain
Mm,
things which you're just not allowed to talk about. You're supposed to have one particular view
mm,
of
mm.
these kinds of issues, and
And I
I
have a,
have
I have
one.
a, yeah, I have a late uncle who went to prison because he was gay just before the law changed.
Yeah. Um, so you have to have a particular viewpoint, it seems, within the
Mm,
culture of Quakers. You're only allowed one particular viewpoint. You're not allowed to be gender critical, for example. You're not allowed to say, well, actually, maybe we don't need to go any further down this road or whatever. You can't.
mm,
You have to have a
mm,
particular viewpoint. And then the third one is Palestine. So I'm hearing a lot of especially young people where it's a very, very pro-Palestinian approach.
mm.
And really not really listening to the Jewish voices, which there are many amongst Quakers. And it seems to me that when I'm talking, especially to the younger Quakers that I've spoken to, that these three issues cluster together, and that there's a particular approach that is the right thing to think about on each of these three issues.
I
So
think
I
I might
think
include
that's quite a narrow mindset, really.
I might include a fourth, the whole reparations discussion.
Yeah.
And they become topics of the day, don't they? They become kind of in the public eye, and so the whole gender thing and LGBT is kind of in the public eye, and trans rights is in the public eye. Um, Reparations for slavery is in the public eye. So therefore, people have a firm opinion without an awful lot of underpinning knowledge.
Mm.
I think that's the problem. I think.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I suppose if you come at it from a religious perspective or the inward light perspective, it's
Mm,
what I'm trying to do in these videos is say to people, well, look, before I'm interested in your opinions about X, Y, and Z, I'd
mm,
like to know what is your experience of the inward Christ or however you want to put
mm.
it, so that we really get a sense of, how do you know that your opinions, which seem to be very similar to all the ones in the Guardian pages at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
How do
yes.
you know that these are genuinely spirit-led concerns of yours, And are we just blindly following each other? And I suppose that's one of my motivations here is to talk to a variety of different people and to recognize that a lot of different thoughts around these issues are spirit-led and
Mm.
and valid. Um, what's your view on reparations then?
Well, where would my question is why stop with slavery? Look at we've been look at Ireland, look at the Crusades, look at it's just you can't unpick history
No.
with tokenistic throw money at things. It
Yeah.
just buys you column inches and improves your ratings in the public eye, and that's so you get this a tokenistic oh
Mm.
we'll give some money to this, we'll give some money to that,
Yeah. Yeah.
which actually is belittling the cause that I think they're worried about.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I must admit, and I think this is why the whole of BYM structures and the whole of our agenda setting for the yearly meeting, it's
Mm,
all very, very samey. It's all kind of going in a particular direction.
mm.
Um, and I'm not convinced by it at all. So rather than just being negative about those things, why don't we turn them? We're both interested in this kind of what you've called entrepreneurship mindset.
Mm.
Like, what would you like to see young people and perhaps the children's program? talking about? You know, we have a children's program, we have staff uh, at
Mm.
Friend's House who design these programs. What kind of content would you like them to be putting in front of young, Quaker children, young people, about their optimism and about their creativity for the future and entrepreneurial
I
attitude?
think I think there are lessons that can be learned from the past and history of how early Quaker entrepreneurs went about their business. Um, so I think I'd look at history and what can we learn from that? What can we take from that and apply in the context of today's society? But clearly, some things that were done 200 years ago aren't appropriate to repeat today. Some of the attitudes, maybe 100 years ago, aren't appropriate to repeat today. What can we learn from the past? So what can we take from that rich heritage of Quakerism and apply it in a contemporary way? And I think I'd also encourage people to be far more questioning of what they're told by everybody, basically. So try and make sure that you form an opinion based on fact rather than assumption and supposition.
So what would you like to see though? What would you like to see them consider? You say, but we can learn from the past. But I mean, what do you think we can learn from the past? If you had a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old listening, how would you like them to be opening up their minds to different
I think you've
options?
got to start with what they're interested in, and then introduce the things that they might like to discover from the past. I'm probably the least qualified quote to talk about young people, actually.
Hmm. Well, I mean, fair enough. And I suppose I'm not thinking that we have to do that because that's what the children and young people's
Yeah,
program is there to do. But if you're going to talk to those staff members then who are leading these programs, I mean, one of the things we've talked about is let's not only inspire our young people to be going down the protest line. Why don't we, inspire them somehow to, I mean, one of the suggestions I just said was, go into science at university,
yeah,
get
yeah,
your maths.
yeah. I
I mean,
think isn't one of the problems is one of how democratic are we? How much are we member led, faith led, and how much are we staff led? Um, I was a fellow of the RSA until a couple of years ago, and that became it went from being very much member led, fellow led, and democratic to being very much staff led with a very specific agenda that they had as an organisation, which was great for the organisation, but didn't suit all the members. So quite a few of us just jumped ship.
so what do you think is the situation with Quakers in Britain today then? Are we member-led or staff-led?
Good question. I suspect if you ask 10 Quakers, they'll all give you a different answer. I suspect they'd be polarized. We should be spirit led, of course, but that can I can say that I'm spirit led to do this, and you can say you're spirit led to do that, and then we go different ways. So it's quite difficult to get that kind of consensus or discernment.
Hmm. I mean, certainly my experience of working on the central committees and working with staff is, individually, they're all lovely people,
Yeah,
obviously, and
absolutely.
they mean well,
Yeah,
and their
yeah,
heart is definitely in the right place.
yeah,
But as I always say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
not necessarily the case that just because they think they're doing the right thing, that that they are. And I think once you've got career Quakers within a very comfortable career structure,
Mm,
then there's inevitably a lot of inertia that's going to simply keep that moving
mm,
along. And what worries me is that a culture then develops within that staff organization, which is very, very leftist or very, very protest driven,
mm, mm.
or whatever, however you might say, especially around the topics of the day. And I think that's where we're at, and it feels very sluggish.
Yeah.
And not very creative and certainly not entrepreneurial. I mean,
Mm.
what have we actually achieved and created as an organization of 10,000 people? What have we done creatively in recent years? I don't know.
Well, we're giving away Woodborough, just
So,
ask me to confirm my language.
so what is your hopes or fears for the future of Quakers then in Britain?
Um, well, I guess I hope that it can get back to basics, whatever those basics are, and it can be spirit-led, and that it can be a force for good in the world, and it can grow its membership. I think for every Quaker in a meeting, there are probably 10 people who aren't in that meeting who are disillusioned with wherever they might go on Sunday morning, who are looking for meaning in life, who are questioning life, who are challenged by some of the changes they're seeing in the wider world. And actually, a Quaker meeting is a very comfortable and warm environment in which to reflect and discern and think about those things.
Mm,
Um, I described it to somebody a while ago as a weekly digital detox. So you'd turn your phone on to flight mode and just zone out. And most people don't do that.
mm,
So even at a very basic level, giving people that opportunity to reflect, to think, to be quiet is grossly underrated and hugely valuable.
mm. So
And
back to basics.
another paradox, of course, is that I mean, entrepreneurship is about being outgoing and promoting what you're doing, and Quakers are not at all evangelical. Almost discouraged. Outreach is kind of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Mm,
We've got something really good going here, but we're not saying good about it. We're not encouraging people to come and discover it.
so the back to basics you're advocating is coming back to Quaker meeting and what it provides
Yeah,
on Sunday mornings or whenever else it
yeah.
takes place. Um, and
If you like,
so,
that's the essence of the product that we have, isn't it? If we're talking in marketing terms, that's what we're selling. That's what we're encouraging people to benefit from, to
mm,
experience.
mm,
And I think then when you get that, then you start to build a capacity. Then you start to get a group of people who, and the conversations over coffee will go in different directions, and then you start to get some momentum
mm,
or groundswell.
mm. Well, 1 hour on a Sunday is not enough to
No,
generate a lot of that, is it? I mean, one of the things I'm advocating for is longer meetings for worship, and you spend more time together doing, thinking about things, having some input together, and then
yeah.
meeting time, so trying to
And
structure.
there's this concept of a meeting for worship that lasts as long as it lasts, isn't there? That you come in and out of. I mean,
Mm.
I've nearly been to one of those to see what it was like. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think a lot of the problems we're talking about, the challenge we're talking about within the Quaker community are shared by any community of common interest of people. I think part of it is about the human condition and where we are as
Mm,
people. So look at the RSA, look at government, look at America, look at anything at the moment that's out there, and the Church of England is another good example.
mm,
What is it, and what's it trying to do, and who is it, and who is it for, and how can it attract people?
mm,
So this isn't about Quakerism in isolation. I don't think it's about Quakers in isolation. I think it's about society as a whole.
mm. Yeah. And that's really what these conversations are about, really, to try
Mm.
to reflect on that.
I think one of the things that's good about being a Quaker is we don't have answers, but we have questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost a defining philosophy, isn't it? We have questions. The meeting I used to go to, they had breakfast meetings, and we'd have discussions about theism and deism. And I thought, well, what other religious group would do this? we actually just would have a conversation about what the heck is it we're talking about, what we're worshipping here.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Keep.
it's refreshingly different, but still
Yeah.
challenged.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of questions in there that are going to be thought-provoking.
Well, I get emails, I wonder, from people that listen to this and think, oh, you're wrong, or you've misguided us. What the heck are you doing being a Quaker? You should be somewhere else. We'll find out.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for sharing with us, and I'm sure that would be very thought-provoking for
Hopefully. Thank you.
listeners.
It's been fun.